Hi guys, welcome to the next session of our course Selenium with Java. And in this session, we are going to be continuing the same page object model code that we were discussing in our last session. If you remember, in our last session, we were trying to understand what is page object model code, why we need to have page object model code, and how to write page object model code by creating multiple different pages pretty much aligned with the application under test within our test as well. So you can see that we have a login page, we have a home page, employee list page, and the create employee page. I also gave you some details of how you can create all the page object model code using the locators, the constructors, and also the action methods, and returning the page itself while you try to perform the operation on a specific page. So this is otherwise called as page navigation concept. So we were discussing all these in our last session, and I'm sure you would have already completed your homework for the create employee page and for the employee list page. And I'm sure if you have done that, it's amazing. If you have not, then we are going to be doing in this particular session. And I'm also going to help you write even in a better fashion as I promised you in our last session. So we are going to be doing all these things in this particular session. Well, as that said, I'm just going to start writing the code over here a bit more faster instead of me delivering every single thing that we have already discussed in our last session, because that's going to ruin our time to learn what we're trying to learn. So I'm going to just make things more faster this time. So within this employee list page, you know that we have got two controls, which is going to be the create new and also the grid. I'm not going to worry about the grid for now, just the create new, and it's going to be a link if I'm not wrong. So if I just go to the test that we already have got, it's going to be the link. So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to go to the employee list over here, and I'm going to say private by. I'm going to import that, and I'm going to say lnk or maybe btn create new is equal to this one, right? And I'm going to write the action method over here, which is going to be public void click create new, and I'm going to perform a click operation. So I'm going to say driver dot find element of the btn create new dot click. But guess what? Every single time while I click the create new, it's going to be returning me the new create employee page, right? And we have to pass the driver. But this create employee page, I don't think there is a driver parameter that we have passed in. So I'm going to go ahead and create a constructor for that as well. Pretty much like whatever that we did in our last session. So I'm going to say public create employee page web driver of the driver, and I'm going to create the field, remove the final, don't need it. And over here, I'm going to start writing the locators for the name as well. So I'm going to say by, and let me import, let me import this locator, and I'm going to say a txt name, which is going to be, let me go see what is the name. I think it is by name. So I'm going to stay like that, and I'm gonna duplicate. So which is going to be txt duration worked. So I think the locator was duration worked, and it's located using its ID this time. Let me close all the tabs because it's so confusing. Just open these two tabs. So I'm gonna go here, and I'm gonna say ID as duration worked, and we also have got an email and probably salary, right? So I'm gonna say txt email, which is going to be email, and txt salary, which is going to be obviously salary. And I also have got a drop down for the grade. So I'm gonna say, just duplicate this. It's gonna be DDL because it's a drop down, and I'm gonna say grade with the name as grade, which is okay. And we have done all of these over here. And we finally have got a button, if I'm not wrong, just this one to create the employee. So it's going to be btn create, and I'm going to say .btn, but this is located using the CSS selector. See, all the locators are sitting over here this time. And now we need to write the action method. You know what is the action method? Basically, it's going to be public void create new employee, and we are going to create the employee. But because we're going to be creating new employee, we need to supply some data in it. And you remember in our last lecture, while we're trying to perform a login operation, we pass them as a parameter, the username and password. Same thing, I can do it over here as well. Like I can say txt name, string name, and then string of duration worked, and string of email, and string of salary, and string of grade, which is going to be this one. So all these things can be passed as a parameter for this particular method. And now I can just say driver.findElement, and I'm going to say txt name.send keys of name, something like that. I'm going to keep on duplicating this, and I can say txt duration worked as duration worked, and txt email as the email, and txt salary as the salary. Oops. Yeah, sorry. Yes, it's capital letters. So I'm going to say small letter salary. And finally, we also need to pass the grade. You remember for the grade, we have to use the drop down. So guess what? We are going to be using our custom method that we written in our last few lectures. I completely forgot about it. If you're already done in your homework, amazing. If not, we can just do that right over here. We can just use this operation. So I'm going to say copy this whole thing, and let's go in here, and I'm going to say UI extension dot perform dropdown selection, and the grade is going to be DDL grade, and I'm going to supply the value, which is going to be grade over here, not by index, maybe by you remember we have something like text, so I can pass the text over here. We can even replace all these from using the driver.findElement with the code that we have already written. You remember the UI extension that we have got. So I'm gonna say UI extensions dot perform enter text. I can pass the driver, and I need to pass the txt name, and the value is going to be name. So I can do that as well. So we can do these entire operation as a custom method that we have written before. Let me try doing that, because we now have some time to do that. So oops, the duplicate. Okay, it's going to be txt duration worked, and it's going to be duration worked, and this is going to be txt salary, which is going to be salary, and this is going to be txt email, which is going to be email. So we can get rid of these, and that should work. See, finally, I also need to perform a click operation. So I'm going to say dot perform click. I'm going to pass the driver, and it's going to be btn create. So that is going to perform the create operation for me. Finally, once you perform a create new employee, you remember it will be presented you to the employee list page once again. So you can return new employee list page with the driver being passed in. So now this becomes an employee list page as a return type for you over here. So hopefully you have done all these things in your homework, so that I don't really have to repeat that, but I just repeated it because sometimes this can trigger you some more ideas while you try to do it. So yeah, that's what all these things are doing it for you. And you can try to replace the rest of this method to the custom method. Probably we can do that later on while we get to the another approach that I'm talking about for the page object model code. But at least for now, we don't really need to do it. Now the smackdown, right? So we have to get rid of all these codes that we have written over here. And I'm going to bring them all to the main method as a page navigation code. So how do we do it? Well, we have the login page, which has performed the login. And this login page, after performing login, it is going to return me what is called as an employee, as a home page, right? So it's going to be a home page. That's what it is going to be returning. So I can just say home page because that's the return type. And we already have a variable for the home page. So I'm going to return that over here, which is great. And now within this home page, I'm going to click the employee list link. And this employee list link is going to be returning as what? Well, that's the one. Yes, employee list, right? It's going to return as the employee list page. And now this employee list page, I can now use to perform the click create new operation. See, this is the page navigation, guys. Like this is the flow that you are trying to do, like while you automate the application. So tomorrow, if anybody comes and read your code, anybody can understand what you're trying to do over here because it is so seamless that it's all just in one single place for you over here. And once you click the create new, you have got create new employee page, or maybe, yeah, create employee page. And now I can just go and create new employee. But over here, I need to pass the value, which is going to be auto user 2, probably just to differentiate. And the duration worked is going to be 2, whatever. And the email is going to be auto test user2@gmail.com. And finally, the salary is going to be 2000 or whatever. And the grade is going to be what, middle? We can just give that. That's the end of this particular operation that we are trying to do. So all the end-to-end operation is now sitting over here in the page object model code, which means we don't need this method. And we also don't need this cumbersome method because now all of these are taken down by just simplifying the way that we can write the code. So you have essentially refactored the code and you have encapsulated all the complexity of a specific page to the respective class files. And you also perform the actions to the from the respective class files. And it also start to make more sense while anybody comes and reads your code, you can see that, okay, this is belonging to this particular page and this guy is belonging to this particular page. I can easily read through, which is amazing. I can't do that over here. Let's try to run this, debug this code and see what's really happening. So that's just coming up. Clicks the login, enters the detail, clicks the employee list. There you go. Clicks the create. That's fast. We have did it. See that? Auto user 2, 20,000, 2222, grade is 2, auto test user, done. So this is already working for us, guys. This is how you can see that we could able to write a page object model code in a very, very super easier fashion. And it's very, very seamless, right? This is the power of the page object model code. So the next thing is, what difference are we going to bring in from this code versus the new code that I'm talking about, the page object model code with a new way of writing the page object model code. So you can see that essentially in our last few lectures before, I was telling you that this perform enter text method, while we're trying to write the custom method, I was telling you that this web driver is being passed as a parameter for every single method. Can we try to reduce this by any mean? And I told you that we are going to be refactoring this method while we get to the page object model code. But you may be wondering, Karthik, you did not even come back to us on this concept that you told us. You promised that, but you did not get to that point. Well, guess what? As I promised you, we are getting to this particular point where we are going to refactor this test method to remove this driver completely. And we are going to make things even more simpler. And that's what we are going to be doing. But before we get there, I'm going to tell you what refactoring that we are going to be making over here in this page object model code. So now you have got the complete idea of how this page object model code looks like. You have digested it. You have worked on it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in another concept of page object model, which is a pattern used sometimes before in Selenium, and people still use it. Just called as FindBy Selenium. Let's go and search that. You see that there is something called as FindBy. And if I'm not wrong, they have got these details on the documentation of the source code itself, but they don't really have any documentation on the selenium.dev page. You can see that this API documentation gives you that you can use this FindBy interface or annotation interface in the page object model code as an alternative mechanism for locating the element or list of elements used in conjunction with PageFactory, which allows user to quickly and easily create pages. Now, what does that really mean? What is this PageFactory, and why they say this this annotation interface FindBy as an alternative mechanism for locating the element? Well, you have seen that over here, I have identified all the locators. I've put them all in over here, but the problem with this approach, or maybe it's not really a problem, but the way this approach is, you have to still pass the locators over here in a more verbose fashion, like locator, like CSS, name, XPath, or ID, or link text, something like this over here. And then you need to pass the locator in any of the method, and then you perform the operation. But instead of you doing all these things over here, you can simplify the code in a way that it is going to be even more readable. And I'll tell you what I really mean about that. So instead of you writing the line something like this, like private by txt name by dot name over here, you can now reduce the number of lines from this way to more readable fashion. So you may think, Karthik, this is already readable. What do you mean by more readable? Well, the more readability comes in while you try to use this at FindBy annotations. This is new. We have not even spoken in the core Java concept. So you can use something called as annotations in Java, which starts with a here symbol or at symbol like this. And you can decorate this with to any of the variables in Java. I'll tell you how it looks like. So let's say FindBy. See that it's a bit different. And it works in conjunction with a variable, something like this. And if you don't have any variable, for instance, it get decorated to this variable. So if you don't really have any of the variable, you get a scrolly line there. Like FindBy is not applicable to a method. So this method that it talks about, it can't be applicable to that. So essentially you can't decorate it to a method. You can only decorate this annotation to a variable, because the target for this particular annotation is basically for a field on the element type, not for a method, right? That's what is happening over here. Well, as that's said, at this particular point of time, how do I use this FindBy and how it differentiate from this code? Well, you can open parentheses there, and then you can just say name. See, this is a parameter, and then you can pass the name as name. Wow, what is that name is name? Well, we are identifying or finding the element using a name name locator, and the locator that you can identify is using its name, this one. That's what I'm passing in. Wow, that's cool. So I don't need this one, right? Get rid of it. And not only that, I can also get rid of by locator to a web element type like this. You see, the line has been reduced tremendously and it's even more readable. So this is a web element txt name, and I'm locating it using its name property. That's all. I can do the same thing for the duration work. Just give a second try to understand that. So for the duration worked, keep on clicking the usages. For the duration worked, I'm going to say at FindBy annotation once again. And the way I'm identifying is using its ID, right? So I'm going to say ID is equal to duration worked. This one, this duration worked. Now I can get rid of this guy. And instead of you doing it for the by, I can just do it for the web element instead. It is really cool. It is very powerful, I'm telling you. See, this is starting to make more sense once you start using it. And the same thing, you can do it for the email, salary, and grade, and the button. Let's just do that. At FindBy, and it's all identified using its name. So I'm just going to say name, and well, this is CSS selector, so this is CSS like that, and the name is email, the name is salary, the name is grade, and the CSS selector is .btn. And I put that. I'm gonna get rid of these. I don't need them. I'm gonna change this to web element. Oh, sorry, web element. I'm bringing it back to C#. So web element, web element. We don't need this. We don't need these. We don't need this. Look at that, so beautiful. So this code, it looks like a lot of lines of code, but it is more readable comparing to the previous approach. Again, it's like whether do you want to go with this approach or not, it all depends on you, how you wanted to do it. But people prefer to use this way as well because it is even more readable and you can put all the locators here. So, and also you can see that if you want to say XPath, you can just see XPath, it just brings you up. If you just control space, you see all the different types of locator that you can use, like CSS, name, ID, class path, link text, partial link text, tag name, and all those things. So everything comes in over here for you. So you can just do pretty much like how we use the by dot name, by dot class, by dot XPath. Those are all sitting over here for us as well. That's what we are trying to do over here. But if you read through the documentation over here, in order for you to use this FindBy annotation interface, you need to use this in conjunction with PageFactory. What is PageFactory, guys? Well, PageFactory is a new thing as well. PageFactory is like a factory implement or factory pattern implementation, which is gonna, or like a factory class, as you see here, to make the page object simpler and easier. So what does that really mean is that in order for you to make these annotation to go and identify on the page, you need to use a class, like a factory class called as PageFactory in the constructor of the page, and then you need to call the init elements method. That's interesting. You need to call this additional method to make this work. If not, this is not going to work for you. So you need to call this init elements, and then you need to say the web driver, which is the search context, and for which page that you're trying to do that. Well, I'm going to do that for this page. I can use this keyword. So I'm going to get this driver. I'm going to pass it over here like that. That's what I have to do. Makes more sense, right? Like this is how you do it. And now things have changed over here, and we're getting scrolly lines in the text name, text duration, salary, email. Why? Because you remember the perform enter text method actually gets a by type, not a web element type. So because now we have modified all the variables as web element instead of by type, these methods will start complaining and it doesn't work. And now I have to get rid of these as well. So that's why I was telling you that you can now start fixing this by getting rid of this one, the web driver, guys. And now you can also say this is going to be web element of locator and the value. When I say web element, I don't even need find element, all these things. I can just say locator dot click, and I can just say locator dot clear, and I can just say locator dot send key. You see that the number of lines of code that we have reduced is tremendous, and it's even more readable. We have even removed a parameter from here. So now I can just go back and I'm going to say, I don't even need this guy like that. This driver is gone like this. See, this code is not even complaining and it just works fine. This is what I mean, like how you can get rid of the web driver from the parameter. And also you see that how easy it is, because now we are passing in the web element. You don't need to do like a driver dot find element and then by all those things, because now it's all been taken care for you over here. You also found already, and you have decorated that using the find by annotation. It has reduced tremendously over here. And finally, we're going to do the exact same thing for the drop down as well. I'll give you a second chance. So I'm going to say the web driver is gone, and I'm going to say web element over here. We don't need this guy. I'm just going to say locator. So cool. And even this one, the web perform click, I don't need this driver. I just need web element, and I'm going to say locator dot click, and that's going to go click things for me. And I'm going to say this one is gone and this one is gone as well. See, this code is now super correct. It does everything for you over here. So this is what I meant about. So now you see that this by class is not even required even in the import statement, because we don't even use that anymore. We just do find by. This is going to do driver.find element by operation for you in this particular annotation behind the scene. So that's what is happening over here. So hope you got the idea. I'm not going to go any further in this particular lecture. I want to keep this video a bit shorter so that you can go focus on redoing everything by yourself and see if you can able to make this more understandable, and also try to do the exact same thing, if that makes sense, in your other pages as well, and see if you can get around your head and understand what we have discussed so far. Catch you in the next one. We are going to refactor our rest of the page, and we'll see how we can implement the entire page object model code and also refactor the custom method in a much easier fashion. Thank you.